Welcome, everybody, and thank you for joining our timely discussion on opioids detection and partnerships responding to a public health crisis. I'm John Verrico. I'm the Chief of Media and Community Relations for the Department of Homeland Security, Science and Technology Directorate, and I'll be the moderator for today's panel. Our talk today is part of Series 1 for our whole of government R&D showcase on enhancing public health security and resilience. Let me share a little context before we get started. This conversation today will focus on the important role that S&T and the whole of government research community are playing in helping communities nationwide reduce risks and keep safe in the battle against opioids and other drugs. Unfortunately, tens of thousands of lives have been lost due to the dangers of opioids. No community is immune to this public health crisis. S&T responded to this call to action, putting research and standards development to work and providing new capabilities that will help first responders, those brave men and women who put their lives on the lines each day to keep us safe, and industry partners who develop the equipment needed to keep emergency responders protected on the job. Each of our presenters brings a unique experience and expertise and are known for building strategic partnerships to prepare the country for future threats. And I'm really excited about the next few minutes. So let's get going. I want to introduce our panel first. First, we have Dr. Rosanna Anderson, Program Manager for Opioid Detection and First Responder Capabilities at the Department of Homeland Security, Science and Technology Directorate. We also have Colonel Tom Synan, Chief of Police of Newtown, Ohio Police Department, and co-chair of the Hamilton County Addiction Response Coalition. Dr. Rich Ozanich, Project Manager for Opioid Standards and Equipment Testing at Pacific Northwest National Laboratory, and Phil Mattson, Standards Executive at the Department of Homeland Security, Science and Technology Directorate. Thank you all for being here with us. I'm so glad to have you here with such an esteemed crowd. Let's start this off and put things in context. There is no doubt that opioids and other drugs have become a real public health crisis. So let's start by discussing how S&T's research investments benefit communities and their fight against opioids. Rosanna, would you explain why this work is needed and how it helps first responders and industry partners?
Sure, thanks, John. So first responders and other frontline operators depend on accurate and sensitive field detection equipment to detect illicit drugs, including highly potent synthetic opioids like fentanyl. However, we have limited reliable information on how well these systems perform, especially against diluted fentanyl or its potential analogs. Working with the S&T National Lab, federal and state partners, as well as industry, we analyze the challenges associated with opioid detection and establish standardized, repeatable guidance for both testing and best practices for operational use, with consideration of the evolving threat and advancing technology. We're now collaborating with industry to expand the equipment's onboard libraries to see a broad range of drugs, including opioids and other emerging synthetic drugs, and then providing those results back to the response community.
That's great. So Chief Synan, let me ask you, how do you see this research and the science and innovation that impacting your day-to-day frontline operations back in Ohio?
Well, sure. Thanks for having me. The work that S&T does is so important to us on the street because it allows us to transition from being reactive to proactive. And that means we can intervene before the damage is done and not wait till after. Being able to identify the fentanyl analogs and other synthetic drugs and having that library that catalogs it allows us to develop plans, be more flexible in our response while keeping first responders more safe. And here's probably one of the most important parts of it. It takes out the worst enemy of any first responder, and that's surprises.
I love it. That's brilliant. So let's look at, what does it take for this work to become a reality and make those societal impacts that Chief Synan's talking about. So let's get into the basics. The importance of standards development and providing communities, both big and small, urban and rural, with tools and guidance. Phil, can you tell us about your work in the opioids detection field and how does this help responders like Chief Synan?
Thank you, John. So, this is an example of a great partnership and collaboration. Why are standards? Why do we use standards? Why are standards important? Standards help us, buy down risk. It fosters compatibility and interoperability, which these standardized libraries and being able to understand what these materials are is very important. And it gives you greater confidence in the product. The government uses standards in order to meet mission requirements. We're working this partnership in order to develop the standards to meet the mission requirements of the first responders. And you just heard how important that was. It provides us buy-in from industry. Industry have been great partners in this collaboration in developing the standards. And industry develops the products, they manufacture the products, and they're part of the team. And so the standards are helping them as much as the products are helping the responders. The maintenance of the standards falls under the responsibility of the Standards Development Organization. It's not the government. And it's government policy to use consensus standards developed through the organizations such as ASTM and others. And the government uses standards for regulations, procurement, rulemaking, and other processes. It's a very important partnership, and we're very happy to be part of it. Thank you.
Excellent. Thank you, Phil. So Rich, what is your role at PNNL, and how are you contributing to meet the moment in providing communities and emergency responders with these capabilities?
John, yeah, at Pacific Northwest National Lab, we're doing the library upgrades. We're measuring these extremely toxic hazardous substances like fentanyl, carfentanil, adding them to the vendor libraries. The vendors then agreed to push those out for free. This gives a greater capability to responders, like the chief noted. You know what you've got. The instrument's not responding with, I don't know what this is. I've never seen it before. And then we're going to go on, and the vendors have also agreed to do performance assessment of their equipment using these standards that Phil mentioned. So we'll be able to publish those results that'll further guide the optimal use and the understanding of limitations by first responders of this various types of equipment with real world samples.
This seems like a great partnership kind of across the spectrum here, all the way from kind of the idea factory out to the end user in the street. And that's brilliant. So in terms of innovation to enhance public health security, what I'd like to ask each of you to do is to briefly discuss how this collaborative effort that's going on here now is different from past initiatives. How do you follow the silence? Briefly, can you speak to where you see this research going next? And let's start with you, Dr. Anderson.
Right. So one of the ways that this is different is that we have really demonstrated a whole of community approach, from federal, state, and local law enforcement and emergency response to industry and academic partners. We built consensus on both how we should evaluate and use detection technologies. Further, to provide for and protect our communities through these cooperative research and development agreements with industry, we're making critical data widely available. And this model is something that we could pursue, again, to stay ahead of the evolving threat.
Excellent, thank you. Chief Synan?
Well, what we've done here is we built relationships, and that means there's communication. And that communication means that there's sharing of information and data from the libraries and from S&T and all the federal partners, and that flows from the street to S&T and S&T back to the street. And this is what's so important. That loop provides us all this ability to stay out in front of this public health, public safety issue, which inherently, because of those relationships and partnerships, it makes us all much more innovative and much more effective.
Excellent, thank you. Phil?
We talk in terms of helping deliver a standards-enabled capability. And what I mean by that is that we have the performance standards that says, what is this thing supposed to do? We have the test methods to verify the performance. We have an appropriate testing program to validate the test methods and validate the equipment. and then provide guidance to the user. The standards and test methods are very technical, so we provide guidance to the users, such as Chief Synan, so they can understand the capabilities and limitations of that equipment, how to train to use it, and how to incorporate it into their ConOps. The standards are an enabler, and we use those to help provide the capability to the responders like Chief Synan, and that's really where it's important. And what we've done is we've fully exercised that entire process, from getting the requirements from the users, going to the lab, working with industry, developing the standards, validating everything, getting the guidance out, doing the testing, and then providing that information back to the responder. And so we really exercise the entire cycle here. Thank you.
Brilliant. I love the detail that's involved in this. Rich, anything you'd like to add to that?
Just expanding what's already been talked about. We're talking testing of over 24 different instruments here, over a dozen different manufacturers, both large and small. This is benefiting their products, making them more capable by expanding these libraries, this catalog. So it's benefiting industry. It's benefiting first responders, and it's benefiting the communities that they work in.
This is brilliant. So if I'm understanding this right, we're working with the product developers who are developing the technology that helps the first responders on the street. But we're ensuring that those technologies and that equipment meets certain standards, and you're providing that information back to those developers to make sure that they're putting out products that meet the needs on the street, validating that on the street, bringing that information back, tweaking the equipment, and getting it ready for the next generation. And I'm just loving how this works. I wish we had so much more time to talk about this, because this is a really very fascinating topic of how all of government, kind of across the spectrum, works together on solving this problem. But our time is unfortunately just about up. So I have one final question, and this is the hardest one of all. If you had to sum up in one sentence some takeaway that you want our audience to remember about this program, what would that be? And I'm actually going to start and go in kind of reverse order. I'm going to start with you, Rich, on this one. What is your one sentence takeaway?
This was a word used by some of the manufacturers that make this field detection equipment, used by tens of thousands of first responders across the U.S. Is unprecedented. This is unprecedented in the value to everybody involved, the vendors, the first responders, the communities.
Excellent. Thank you. Phil?
Again, this is an example of how standards can be used to link the needs of the requirements, the capabilities of industry, and provide that back to the people that are actually using it, and how standards can actually enable that capability.
Rosanna, to you, and then I'm gonna come back to Chief Synan for the boots on the ground perspective.
Thanks, John. So quite simply, I think that this work really embodies the power of a whole of community model for research and development response to a crisis.
Excellent. Chief, take us home with the boots on the ground perspective.
Yeah, I don't know if I can do it all in one sentence, so I'll take a couple of the periods out, but this is really important. I mean, I've seen firsthand the damage done. I've witnessed the loss of an entire family, an entire generation to addiction. The collaborations with S&T and other federal partners are critical. The work that you are all doing, the work that we're doing, and that connection on the street, it's so important because it literally translates to lives being saved in our communities. And I'm grateful for the relationship. So thank you.
Thank you. Thank you so much. This was a very important and educational topic, and unfortunately our time is up. I hope that our audience has found this talk to be helpful. We will have a follow-up slide for you to learn more about this opioids research and the whole of government R&D showcase program, and how you can contact our press team. So on behalf of Dr. Rosanna Anderson at DHS S&T, Chief Tom Synan from Newtown, Ohio, Dr. Rich Ozanich from Pacific Northwest National Lab, Phil Mattson here at DHS S&T. Also, I'm John Verrico. Thank you again for joining us today. Enjoy the rest of the showcase.